October 26th, 2020 Maplewood City Council meeting. We are meeting virtually. Tonight, I wanted to open up our meeting formally acknowledging the passing of Premier Bank founder Don Regan. He passed away last week at the age of 91 years old. I first met Don Regan more than 25 years ago when I moved to Maplewood, and my then two young sons and I went over to Premier Bank and we opened up accounts there. The last time I saw him was last winter, right before the pandemic, and he was still working at the bank. Don loved to tell the story of opening up the bank back in 1974 as the Maplewood State Bank, and he opened it up in a double-wide trailer in what is now the Walgreens parking lot at White Bear and Beam Avenue. At the time, they were the smallest of Minnesota's 714 banks with 1.5 million in capital, and as he tells it, they had no clients. They changed the name in 1988 to Premier Bank so that they could be more regional. And today they have 20 locations, over $1.1 billion in assets, and $123 million in capital. Don Regan was honored in 2018 by the City of Maplewood at our Business Awards ceremony with the Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Growth Award. Don will be remembered lovingly for giving back to our community, for investing in our many local businesses, and for his generosity to those in need. And I am personally aware that Don has contributed to many nonprofits and schools and anonymously, because that's the kind of man that he was. I used to kid him when I would go into the bank about wanting him to move to Maplewood. And he would jokingly reply that he and his wife bought their home in North St. Paul shortly after they got married. And he told me that it was still a pretty good house. While he may have lived in our neighboring city, North St. Paul, he opened up his first bank in Maplewood. Don Regan will be missed in our community, and I just wanted to acknowledge that tonight. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let us start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Sint, would you please do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Councilmember Neblett.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
I am here as well. Council members, is there a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Juniman, a motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? Oh, I forgot to talk about our order for tonight. Sorry about that. Our order tonight will be Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Knutson, Councilmember Neblett, and Councilmember Juniman. So Councilmember Smith, is there any further discussion about the agenda?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knutson.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Neblett.
No thanks.
Councilmember Juniman.
No thank you.
Then I would like to add one point under our council presentations. I'd like to add the food distribution in Maplewood that is coming up this Thursday on October 29th. Okay, having no other discussion, then we'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Moving on to the agenda. Is there a motion concerning the agenda for our Monday, October the 12th, 2020 City Council meeting?
Mean
Minutes.
I move the minutes of the October 12th, 2020 council meeting. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblet. The motion to approve the minutes of our Monday, October 12th, 2020 council meeting. Further discussion, I would like to make one change under the first paragraph under the call to order, talking about the, instead of the word berry, this is the food that was contained in the food boxes that were distributed. It should be dairy, D-A-I. I did look into the box.
Sure.
Dairy, apple,
Well, it could be.
onion, but no berries. And there was dairy, plenty of dairy. Any other discussion? Hearing none, then let's take a vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson,
Aye.
Councilmember Neblet,
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. Okay, moving on to appointments and presentations, council calendar update. Ms. Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The council calendar is just a snapshot of what's coming up. And after this evening, we will have 4 additional meetings to get us through the remainder of 2020. On November 9th, at this point in time, we're planning to have our first hybrid council meeting. And we believe that we will successfully do that. I think before the meeting, I may be contacting council members to see what their preference is so we can plan better for the occupancy in the council chambers. So I'll be touching base with you on that. On November 12th will be our special council meeting to canvass the election results. On November 23rd, that's our regular council meeting. That might be a possible oath of office for our prevailing special election candidates. So I have sent you emails outlining how that works, and there'll be more to come on that after the election, should things change. On December 14th will be our council meeting to have the adoption of the 2021 budget. It says 2020 on there. And the capital improvement plan. And with that, Mayor, members of the council, staff is here to assist you. If you have any items of concern or issues you'd like us to look at, you can let us know now, and we'll put it on our to-do list. And that's it, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, City Manager Coleman. Councilmember Smith, anything to add?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knutson,
No, thank you.
Councilmember Neblet,
No, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman,
No, thank you.
and I have nothing to add as well. Moving on to council presentations, I just wanted to kind of mention the fact that we are having our 3rd food distribution in Maplewood. I know Councilmember Neblet and myself were at the very first one on, I believe that was October 15th. There was another one October 22nd. That one had to be moved indoors into our Public Works building because of the weather. And our 3rd one and final food distribution is going to be occurring this Thursday from 10 until noon. Hopefully, because of the weather, I think it's going to be outdoors again. It will be at the Y on Thursday, October 29th. And since last week's was a little bit different, I thought I would ask Joe Sharon, our communications director, if he would kind of give us an update on the food distribution. This is the program Farmers to Families. Mr. Sharon, are you on the line with us?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Thank you. First of all, this is something that we couldn't have done without the YMCA. Chris Costa over at the Y became aware of this program through the USDA, applied for it. They gave him the approval a couple of days ahead of the first delivery. So, we were putting together stuff on the fly. He called the city to see if we had some equipment and some PR and volunteer support, and we were able to step up and help them out. So in the last 2 weeks, we've given away more than 20 500 boxes of fresh food, which I think is really important to note. A lot of times there's the call for food and it's canned goods, it's things like that. But I think the value here is it's fresh food at a time that people really need it. Bags of apples, potatoes, cans of fresh soup, meats, dairies, milk, which is really, really important for folks to have that. We had coordinated through our public safety department with the area homes that were multi-housing units. And then we also coordinated with our partners at the Rice-Larpenteur corridor who got the word out. And you and Councilmember Neblett also got the word out to our faith community. So as of last week's pickup, we started just a little bit before 10, and by noon, more than 1,200 boxes had been distributed. So the word is out among the community. We're looking forward to the last drop off and pick up this week, which, weather pending, it's going to be a heat wave at 40 some degrees. We'll have it in the YMCA parking lot again between 10 and noon this Thursday. Anyone who's from the community is welcome to pick up a box. Oh, and also I want to make sure we thank our Public Works Department. They stepped up and they were able to clear out the garage so that the alternative would have been to postpone it. But because we were able to have the stuff dropped off in the garage, the weather was not a factor.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Public Works Department. And I know the first day I was out, thank you to our Public Safety Department as well, that there were officers, police officers, and fire EMS folks out there distributing food. And it was really a team effort. So if you or someone that you know is food insecure, please come out to the parking lot at the Maplewood Y, our community center, between the hours of 10 and noon on Thursday. And it's as easy as driving in, and you open up your trunk and food boxes are placed in your trunk. So please come out if you are in need or if you know someone else who is. So thank you, Mr. Sharon, for that update. Much appreciated.
Mayor,
Yes,
may I
Councilman.
add one thing?
Sure.
The second day, the first day I think was a little slow for folks, but the food still got out. At the second, like this past Thursday's handout, it was running like a machine. And I did stop by just in case they needed a hand. And it was a wonderful problem to have that not only I didn't need to be there, but there was another person that had come up to volunteer and everything was covered. I mean, it was all staff. So I just want to give a shout out to the staff for stepping in and making, it was a machine. It was so smooth. And I don't know how long it took to give out all the boxes this second Thursday. But if it was on the, what looked like the level of how quickly people were coming in, and Mr. Sharon can speak to this, I'm sure, they were probably done within that scheduled time of 10 to noon. But I just really do want to give a shout out to the staff for making it happen because, like I said, it was a machine. And people were served quickly and got on their way. And yeah, so thank you. I just wanted to say thank you.
And thank you very much for coming out. I know Councilmember Neblett and we were lifting those boxes and happy to do it. So hope to see people out there. I'm planning on going out again on Thursday. Moving on our agenda, the resolution of appreciation for Headsey Commissioner Brian Finley. Mr. Martin, that I believe you are the presenter tonight.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Brian Finley has served on the Housing and Economic Development Commission since the beginning of 2016. He recently alerted the city that he would not be seeking reappointment to the commission, so his tenure with the city has ended. Mr. Finley is very active in other organizations as a volunteer in the city and has a professional background in economic development, so he will definitely be missed. So he served just under 5 years with the Housing and Economic Development Commission, and the council is being asked to adopt a resolution of appreciation tonight to acknowledge Mr. Finley's tenure with the head seat.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Is there a motion to adopt the resolution of appreciation for Brian Finley?
I move approval of the resolution of appreciation for Brian Finley for his service on the Head Seat Commission.
Moved by Juniman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Knutson. The motion to adopt the resolution of appreciation for Brian Finley. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Finley, for your time on the HEDSI Commission. It is much appreciated. Moving on to the proclamation for Small Business Saturday. Ms. Coleman, would you please present this one?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City of Maplewood proclaims Saturday, November 28th as Small Business Saturday. And I think now more than ever, it's important that we try to remember to support our local businesses who are struggling through the COVID pandemic. Since its inception in 2010, Small Business Saturday has illuminated the significance of supporting small, independently owned businesses across the country. This falls between Black Friday and Cyber Monday. It's a day dedicated to supporting the diverse range of local businesses that helps create jobs, boost the economy, and keep our communities thriving around the country. Supporting the Small Business Saturday demonstrates a commitment to our communities in which we live, creates goodwill, and when we support small businesses, we create jobs and local communities preserve their unique culture. So staff is recommending that you approve the proclamation included in your packet.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion about this? Councilmember Smith.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knutson.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Neblett.
No, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
I have a question, and it may not be answerable at the spur of the moment like this, but do we have any idea how many small businesses we have in the city of Maplewood?
Mr. Martin might have an idea about that.
Mr. Martin.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't have a specific number or percentage. That is something that through our census data, we would be able to get a handle on, and be happy to include that as a follow-up in your FYI communication, if that would be helpful.
That would be helpful. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Mr. Martin, because I remember about 4 or 5 years ago when they gave us the number, it was unbelievable. It was over 400. So that's a lot of people making a living off of a business in Maplewood. So I just think it would be a good thing for the community to know.
Good. We'll get that information out.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the proclamation for, excuse me, for Small Business Saturday for November 28th.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Neblett, the proclamation for Small Business Saturday on Saturday, November 28th. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilmember Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson.
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett.
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman.
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. It's important for everyone to get out and promote our small businesses. Moving on to our consent agenda. Is there a motion concerning our consent agenda? We have items 1 through 10. 11.
Mayor,
11.
Mayor's Council Member Knutson, I'd like to pull out number 5. I have a conflict of interest. Elam Care is a member of my cooperative organization. So I have a business interest in Elam.
Okay. Thank you for alerting us to that.
Mayor, could we?
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we should probably highlight numbers 6 and 7,
Okay.
please.
So let's start with the highlights, number 6 and 7. This is in the Metropolitan Council's Livable Communities Act and the Nature
Right.
Center Trail Improvements.
Yes.
Ms. Coleman, are these yours?
I think number 6 is Mr. Martin, I think.
Okay, I'm looking for it right now. Mr. Martin, is number 6 yours?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, could you please give us some more background on this?
Sure. Mayor and Council, thank you. Every 10 years after the cities adopt their comprehensive plans in the metropolitan area, they are afforded the opportunity to opt into the Livable Communities Act programs, and that's operated by the Metropolitan Council. It's their grant programming. And what the city commits to is to work towards its affordable housing goals. And those affordable housing goals were used in the development of our 2040 comprehensive plan. So we're at that point again, now that we've adopted our comprehensive plan, to recommit to the grant program through the Metropolitan Council. What this doesn't obligate the city to fund affordable housing or to ensure that affordable housing is built, but it does say that the city will strive towards meeting those goals. And then really what the metric is for doing so is that if we have redevelopment projects that we're looking for partnership from the Metropolitan Council through funding, is they take a look at how well we're doing on meeting those goals. And that's one of the metrics that they use in deciding who they're going to fund. So when the city a few years ago received grant funding for the Frost English program, or Frost English redevelopment, we received just under $2 million from the Metropolitan Council. And that's because compared to other cities, we were doing a good job of meeting our goals. So that's what we'll continue to work on over these next 10 years. So again, when we have those redevelopment projects that we would look for funding partners, we'll be in a good position to receive that funding. So again, we're just opting into the program for an additional 10 years by adopting the resolution tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Councilmember Juniman, does that satisfy
Yes,
your?
I just wanted people to be aware that if you don't opt into this, then you've passed on an opportunity for assistance for funding affordable housing. And so that's important to us. Not only does it help us promote it, but it also helps us to cover some of the incentives financially. So it is important for us to do this.
Thank you very much. Number 7, the Nature Center Trail Improvements. I don't see Audra Robbins on the participant list. Ms. Coleman, would you take this one, please?
Certainly.
Mayor, my apologies for interrupting City Manager Coleman. Audra is on the phone as a call-in participant if you choose to hear from her.
Perfect.
That would be, why don't we let Audra explain, and then City Manager Coleman, you can include maybe some commentary on the Parks and Nature Center task forces that we have going on.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be great.
Ms. Robbins.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. This item is concerning some improvements on the trails and the amenities around the Nature Center. There are 3 bridges, an observation deck, and stairs that lead up to the neighborhood that have needed some TLC for quite a while. They were built 25 to 40 years ago, and they're in need of replacement and repair. And one thing that we found, especially in this time of COVID-19, is even though we have closed the Nature Center building, the grounds are being used regularly, and more people are using the trails and those amenities. And in the past years, about 10,000 people have used the trails, and we haven't gotten a count for this year, but we have noticed a marked increase in the use of the trails and the boardwalk. So This item was in our CIP plan, and we are looking for approval tonight to do these improvements. It would include bridges, and then a section of the boardwalk, an observation deck, and then, as I mentioned, the stairs that are leading up to the neighborhood, just to make it much easier to use the trails and enjoy the outside space in a safe way.
Thank you very much. And for those who are listening and may not be looking at our agenda, the item cost is $75,725 for those. Basically, it's repairs and upgrades to the decks and stairs. So, thank you, Ms.
Correct.
And it's funded through the Park Improvement Fund.
It is.
Yes,
Thank you.
correct. And we did obtain 2 quotes for these services, and we are asking council to consider the quote from Minnesota Boardwalks LLC in the amount of $75,725 for all of those improvements.
Thank you very much. While we're at it, City Manager Coleman, can you just give us a little update on the Nature Center and the Parks and Rec task forces that we have going?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. I believe it was back in August, the council created, I should say, 2 different task forces. One to look at park and recreation programming in the city of Maplewood, and to work with partners to see how we could do that more effectively without leaning so much on the taxpayers of Maplewood, but looking for a sustainable method to provide park and rec programming in the city of Maplewood. And they have had 3 meetings, or their 3rd meeting will be tomorrow night. And that is being staffed by Audra Robbins, and Mr. Sable is being the facilitator. On the Nature Center Task Force, myself and Mr. Sable and Ms. Robbins are the staff people who are attending those meetings. We've had 3 meetings now. I think we are making really great progress. It's a really active group, passionate group about environmental education. At our last meeting last week, we looked at 5 or 6 other nature centers in the area to get a sense of how those are funded and the kind of programming that they're doing. And I think we are on track to get some recommendations to council by the end of the year. It's a really good group. Councilmember Juniman is the council liaison to the Nature Center Task Force, and Councilmember Knutson is the representative to the Park and Recreation Task Force. I would say overall we're making great progress, and we've got a lot of good volunteers working through this with us.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman, and I really appreciate the hard work that everyone is putting in, and I'm looking forward to the recommendations as well. So we have addressed number 6 and 7 as highlighted. What I would propose, I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda items 1 through 4 and 6 through 11, and we'll come back and do 5 separately because of Councilmember Knutson's conflict.
Second.
So my motion is for 1 through 4 and 6 through 11.
So moved.
I think I moved, so
Yep.
Second.
Councilmember Neblett will make you the second. Is that all right?
Sure.
Okay. Second by
Well, I
Councilmember
seconded
Neblett.
it, but
Any further discussion concerning 1 through 4 or 6 through 11? Hearing none. Councilmember Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson,
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett,
Aye.
and Councilmember Juniman.
aye.
I vote aye as well. Let us then.
I will move item 5, the conditional use permit review for Elam Care Senior Housing Facility.
Moved by Juniman. Is there a second
Second.
concerning number 5 of the consent agenda? Seconded by Neblett. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Knutson, you abstain.
Abstain.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neblett,
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman,
Aye.
and I vote aye as well. That addresses our consent agenda. We have one public hearing tonight. And Mr. Love, you and Edward Sanderson are the presenters tonight. Mr. Love, do you want to set this up for us, please?
Yes, Mayor and Council, good evening. As you mentioned, Ed Sanderson is joining staff tonight. He is with Metro Transit, is the manager of design and engineering for the Gold Line BRT project. Tonight, Ed has a presentation that will cover the municipal consent request, as well as give a little bit of background on the project as a refresher for those who don't maybe remember the Gold Line project. I recommend that he gives this presentation prior to the opening of the public hearing. Then following the public hearing, staff recommends council consider the resolution for municipal consent for the Gold Line BRT project. Both Ed and I will be available to answer any questions. And with that, I recommend we turn it over to Ed for his presentation.
Mr. Sanderson, are you on the line with us?
Hello, hi, this is Ed Sanderson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. And we
Great.
can see the PowerPoint.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor Abrams and council members. Appreciate the opportunity to come to you tonight and present to you on the Gold Line project. As Steve mentioned, I have a little PowerPoint presentation I put together to give you a little background of where we are on the Gold Line BRT project, and most importantly, to talk about the municipal consent that is before you tonight for a portion of the project in Maplewood that has had some reviews by MnDOT, and I'll get into that as we move through the presentation. So tonight I'll touch again on the project. Most of you are quite familiar with the project, so I'll keep it pretty high level, but welcome any more specific questions as we move through that. I'll talk about the collaboration that we've had with the City of Maplewood and 3M through the process. Also talk about the MnDOT layout approval process and the municipal consent that is required as part of that. Specifically, when is municipal consent triggered? What is specifically triggering that municipal consent and is before you tonight, the procedure for resolution, and the schedule for that process. And then I'll close with an overall Gold Line project timeline. So for the Gold Line BRT project, it runs from downtown St. Paul, moving west to east to Woodbury, paralleling I-94 for much of its alignment before crossing 694 and then turning south with a new bridge across 94 connecting Bielenberg Drive and Helmo Avenue in Oakdale. The project will be approximately 10 miles long, will include 21 new stations. It will be Minnesota's first dedicated guideway BRT. Unlike some of the BRT lines that have opened recently, the A line and the C line in the urban core are high frequency bus corridors. They do not have their own dedicated bus lane. So the Gold Line will have for about 70% of its alignment will be in a dedicated BRT lane. It will serve both Washington and Ramsey County and provide access to over 300,000 jobs and access for over 500,000 people. The project is led by the Metropolitan Council. Within our project office, we have staff from various agencies involved in the project. I am a MnDOT employee. We have Washington County staff as well as Ramsey County staff. And then we have a lot of touch points with the cities along the corridor: St. Paul, Maplewood, Oakdale, Landfall, and Woodbury. This gives you a sense of the system, the transit system in the Twin Cities today. The yellow line you can see here is the Gold Line. So it will connect with the Central Corridor, the green line that runs from downtown St. Paul to downtown Minneapolis. We have the Southwest LRT extension that goes out into the western suburbs. We have the blue line that goes down towards the airport, the red line existing that's coming up from the south. And then you're probably familiar as well with the Rush line that will go from downtown St. Paul to the north through Maplewood to downtown White Bear Lake. So as part of our process, our design process, our planning process, we have a series of standing meetings that occur from a biweekly basis to a quarterly basis, and they consist of a lot of acronyms. We have our issue resolution teams, our design advancement and refinement teams, our IRTs and our DARTs, where we really get into the details of the design. We have our TAC, our Technical Advisory Committee, which we use as a platform to present design ideas that are important across communities, not just particular design issues at intersections or locations that are specific to one city or another. And then at the policy level, we have our Corridor Management Committee. And these committee structures really help us work with our project partners at the design level through the policy level, keep people updated on scope changes, cost changes, discussions with FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, how we're working through that process with FTA, and also on our overall schedule. As you know, the corridor parallels 94, and in that section within Maplewood that really traverses through the 3M campus, the southern side of the 3M campus. So we've worked a lot with 3M over the last few years to address issues related to stormwater and locations of best management practices or stormwater BMPs. We are building a bridge over McKnight as well as over Century Avenue on either side, of the 3M campus. So we've worked with 3M on some aesthetic issues related to the bridge at crossing McKnight. Some access issues from Hudson Road to the 3M campus are changing. That's part of the reason we're here tonight. So we've worked with 3M on that as they look to do some construction on their campus as well, making sure that our design is not precluding what they would like to do. And through each iteration and meeting with 3M, we are fine tuning our design to be in parallel with the changes that they're anticipating for their campus. And then also pedestrian connections. The main stop along the Gold Line within Maplewood will be adjacent to 3M's campus, and providing pedestrian connections, not only to connect to the existing paths that traverse through the 3M campus, but also to connect east and west to Century and to the McKnight Road area, and allow access for the residents of Maplewood. So in terms of the MnDOT layout approval process, so as I mentioned, much of the Gold Line's alignment lies within MnDOT's right-of-way along the north side of I-94. Because of that, the project has to go through a number of touch points with MnDOT, from its geometric layout that entails new signals, bridge crossings, changing access points, changing stormwater ponds, and also requires a whole separate process of the bridges along the corridor, and working through at different design points, a preliminary phase, a 60% design phase, a 90% design phase, reviews with MnDOT's bridge group to make sure that they're consistent with their expectations of new infrastructure within the MnDOT corridor. These layouts that I refer to, we have a number of them along the corridor because we have a number of these touch points with the MnDOT system. The two layouts, and I'll show those at the end of my presentation to give you a better visual of what those look like, focus on the area at McKnight Road and then again at Century Avenue, and trigger these requests that require municipal consent. So a little bit about municipal consent and what is it. State statute 161.164 is what the municipal consent requirements fall under. And it's approval that's required for any trunk highway project that results in changing access, increasing or reducing traffic capacity, or requiring acquisition of permanent right-of-way. And that acquisition can be triggered by a need for right-of-way or easement for drainage issues or stormwater best management practices. So within Maplewood, these are the two triggers of municipal consent. Right now on Hudson Road, as you move from east to west, at the 4th Street entrance to 3M, there's a right in is allowed, and then leaving 3M, a right out is allowed. Under the new configuration, the guideway, the BRT guideway, will be running through here. There will also be a trail. So here on the right side of your screen, the purple is the BRT guideway. The brown is the trail. The yellow represents Hudson Road, east to west, and a right turn in. So we will be changing the access here to 3M to allow for only a right turn in, not a right turn out. We have worked through this design solution with 3M, so they are on board with this approach. We looked at a number of different iterations through here, ultimately balancing priority for the BRT system, adding a signal to stop traffic here from making that right turn, to give that priority to the BRT, and to also allow that safer movement of pedestrian across the access into 3M. So that's trigger number one for municipal consent. The second trigger in this area, so on the east side of the campus, Century Avenue running north-south, these are the on and off ramps. Here's 94 running east-west to the south. So this ramp here comes in off of 94 to Century. Those of you who have driven this area know you can cross here onto Hudson to get into the 3M campus. As you come south on Century, there's also this Hudson Road ramp that connects in here. With the BRT system, we're bringing that in generally in this area through here. In doing that, this ramp here is being relocated down to here. This ramp here is also being relocated down to here. So as you can see on the right side of the screen, the yellow running north-south is Century Avenue. Yellow here and yellow here are the off-ramp from 94 to Century, the on-ramp from Century to 94 that have been pulled farther south so that the BRT can go up and over Century Avenue here. And in doing that and changing some of the geometry, adding the BRTs, changing some of the geometry of the on and off ramps, we're needing to fine tune some of our stormwater BMPs and purchase some additional right-of-way to allow for an additional BMP or best management practice to treat the stormwater that's coming off from the impervious surfaces in this area, the BRT system, as well as Century Avenue. That area here, this line, this blue line here, on this side of it right now, that is 3M property. On the south side of that is MnDOT property. So we will be purchasing this portion for the BMP from 3M. So the first case, altering the access to 3M, and then the second case, purchasing right away for stormwater purposes. Those two things trigger municipal consent. So in terms of this municipal consent process, once we establish that municipal consent is required, MnDOT submits a letter to the city. I provided that letter to Steve, requesting city approval. We typically provide a good faith cost estimate of the city's share of the project. In this case, these two components of municipal consent are not triggering any cost responsibility for the city. These are costs that are borne by the Gold Line project. Once that letter is submitted, the city schedules a public hearing, holds a public hearing, which we're having tonight, and then ultimately passes a resolution approving or disapproving their municipal consent with these portions of the project. The municipal consent is just for these components of the project, the altered access and the purchase of additional right-of-way for stormwater. It's not a municipal consent for the entire project. It's not a municipal consent for the city still has the opportunity through our IRTs, our DARTs, our TAC, our CMC to bring their comments forth on the project, to suggest changes to the project. We continue to work with Steve and Mike on our design. So I just wanted to make that clear that the municipal consent is just for these two components of those layouts that were before you. So just to summarize the schedule, the letter was submitted to the city on August the 24th. The public hearing was published for notification on the 23rd of September. And tonight we're holding that public hearing. And then within 90 days of tonight, the city would pass that resolution approving the layouts. A little bit on the overall schedule for Gold Line. Project development phase ended in January of 2020. That culminates with our environmental analysis receiving a decision by the Federal Transit Administration. Typically after that, you enter the engineering phase. We have continued to advance our design and engineering. We have not entered the official FTA engineering phase. We anticipate that happening in January of 2021. Part of the delay on that was driven by COVID, doing some scope modifications to make sure that we had a rating where we wanted it so that we would be eligible for the maximum amount of FTA funding for the project. But our design continued to advance. We are completed 60% design and advancing towards 90% design, which will be completed in the March timeframe, March 2021. And then 100% complete in August 2021. So we are still on schedule to construct the project in 2022 and 2023 with operations in 2024. With that, I just want to bring up a couple other visuals to give you a better sense of what these layouts consist of. So this is the area of Century. To give you a little bit more context, over here is Tanner's Lake. This purple, again, going over is the BRT bridge over Century Avenue. This is that stormwater basin we talked about where we need to purchase this little sliver of land from 3M. This is the relocated off-ramp. This is 94. This is the relocated off-ramp off of 94. And then remember that the existing on-ramp starts here and comes down like this. That will be relocated and you will access it this way. So this is the layout that's in the vicinity of this intersection. And then this is as we coming west to east. This is McKnight. We cross over McKnight. This is the 3M campus here. I'll zoom in a minute. Just wanted to give you a little more lay of the land. This is that 4th Street entrance here. So that is that access point that used to be a right in, right out, will now just be a right in. And then this is the trail as well as a pedestrian connection down to the existing street level network. This is a pedestrian connection that goes over McKnight, comes back down, eventually ties down on this side, providing access for those on the 3M campus and from the Maplewood station over to the Sunray area in this up in this area. So with that, I will close my presentation. I am happy to talk through some of these locations in more detail or offer any more information on the Gold Line project as a whole.
Thank you, Mr. Sanderson. That was a very helpful presentation, I think, for all of us. At this point, we've heard from Mr. Love, we've heard from Mr. Sanderson. I'm going to give the council an opportunity to ask any questions. And then once we're done with our questions, then I will open up the public hearing concerning the municipal consent of the Gold Line BRT project for the 2 reasons that Mr. Sanderson outlined, altering access and also the purchase of the right-of-way for drainage. So with that, council members, Council Member Smith, do you have any questions? And also, do you have any comments since you serve on the Gold Line Policy Advisory Committee?
I just want to thank the team for this presentation. I think it's fantastic. I know it's been a lot of work getting to this point, and feeling very excited about the project, and looking forward to next steps.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Knudsen, do you have any comments or questions?
It appears that you've had a close collaboration with 3M, giving the impact of their access and stuff is going to be different. I'm assuming they're very cooperative and supportive of the project.
They are. They've been a very willing and helpful partner, and we've engaged them in many different ways, and we'll continue to do that through the design process.
And I'm sure certainly Maplewood has been good to deal with.
Yes, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's nice to hear. Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Sanderson, thank you for this presentation. I agree with the mayor. It was very good and clarifying. I really do appreciate your drawings, and I don't know if you call them drawings, but you know what I mean. The streets and such, and the project and what it's supposed to look like. It really helped me visualize this better. I'm also glad to know that at this point in time, there isn't any cost for the city for these changes. So thank you for that too.
Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. These drawings are really mind-boggling. Trying to lay them on McKnight Road and Century. They're helpful, but it is mind-boggling. I have one question, and it's probably insignificant, but on the one for the bridge over Century Avenue, and then there's that little triangle you're going to buy from 3M, and then it says wall height 20 feet with this little arrow. Is that down to where the bridge is going to go over Century? Is that the idea? It says.
Yeah, so there'll be a wall here that will serve as there'll be a bridge abutment under here.
Yes. Okay.
So that will be a flared wall off the edge of that bridge abutment.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
My, oh my. Woo.
Okay. And I don't have any questions. And so what I'd like to do at this point is open up the public hearing. It is open. City Clerk Sint or Mr. Folds, do we have anyone who would like to speak at the public hearing concerning the municipal consent of the Gold Line BRT project, City Project 14-05?
Mayor and Council, we have no callers on the Zoom call.
Okay. Then I'll call, I know it's not required, but I will just call for it again. Is there anyone who would like to speak concerning the municipal consent of the Gold Line BRT project, City Project 14-05? Mr. Foltz, is there anyone on the line now?
I apologize. I did not catch that. No, Mayor and Council, there is still no one on the call.
Okay. Then in that respect, then I will close the public hearing. Thank you very much. And council members, is there any other comment or question before we move to approving the resolution, making a motion for that? Councilmember Smith, anything else to add?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Knudsen?
No, thank you.
Councilmember Neblett?
No, Mayor, thank you.
Councilmember Juniman?
Only one, Mayor. And this, I may be duller than the rest, but it says there will be no cost to the city in this current plan. Are there possibilities of future costs that could pop up?
You know, that's a very good question. Let's talk first with Mr. Love. Mr. Love, could you respond to Councilmember Juniman, please?
Mayor and Council, so as of right now, my understanding is that the pedestrian bridges that go over both McKnight and Century are proposed to be funded through 50% through federal funding and 50% through county funding. I think the bigger discussion, which we are in the process of having right now, is ownership and maintenance. And I think that's where you might see some cost associated to the city, but that is still being reviewed and discussed.
So that would be like a joint powers down the road? Is that what happens then?
Ed, I believe that is correct, right? It would be some kind of an agreement like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, there'll be some kind of ownership and maintenance agreement for all the infrastructure along the corridor. Steve and members of the various cities, Met Council, MnDOT, we met about a year and a half ago and worked out a framework for ownership and maintenance of many of the infrastructure types along the corridor. We did not come to resolution on all of them, and that dialogue will continue. In terms of the two municipal consent items tonight, that altered access and the stormwater BMT, there's no cost to the city, but Steve's correct that those two pedestrian bridges at either crossing of McKnight and Century, there continues to be discussions with Met Council as to who would ultimately own and maintain the non-transit components of those bridges.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution for municipal consent for the Gold Line BRT project, City Project 14-05.
Second.
Moved by Neblett, seconded by Juniman, the resolution approving the municipal consent of Gold Line BRT project 14-05. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then Councilmember Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen?
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett?
Aye.
And Councilmember Juniman?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. Moving on to unfinished business, we have a resolution adopting the revised assessment roll, County Road B and Arcade Street improvements. Mr. Love, you are presenting on that tonight?
Yes, Mayor and Council. So as you recall, at our last council meeting, we had 3 assessment hearings for 3 different projects. 2 of the assessment hearings, we had no objections on. We did receive, I believe, 11 objections as part of this project. Residents were required to file a written notice to object to the assessment amount. These notices had to be received prior to the closing of the public hearing. After the closing of the public hearing, staff gave a recommendation for 10 of those objections at the meeting, which were adopted by the resolution that night. That left one objection that was tabled for staff to review and bring back to you tonight. That particular recommendation was for the Trinity Baptist Church. The address is 611 County Road B. The initial assessment roll proposed that we assess the property $40,600. The appraisal report grouped 3 parcels that are owned by Trinity Baptist Church into one assessment, and for that value of $40,600. The city's intent with the assessment was only to assess the property of 611 County Road B parcel, which fronts the improved project streets. So staff is recommending, in this case, to grant a revision of the assessment for only the 611 County Road B parcel, thereby reducing the assessment to $19,100. With that, I recommend that council check and see if any of the callers are with Trinity Baptist Church and wish to address the council before the council considers this recommendation. I'm available for any questions.
Before we check on any callers, I just wanted to make or ask a question, actually. I'm very familiar with Trinity Baptist Church. My grandparents were members there. Prior to Trinity Baptist, it was called Payne Avenue Baptist. But now the church is actually called Life Point Church. And so we're referring to it as Trinity Baptist. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, Mayor.
Because now it's called Life Point.
Yep, Mayor and Council, according to the county records that we utilize in preparing the assessment roll, the ownership is under the name of Trinity Baptist Church, I believe.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Folds, is there anyone on the line from the church that would like to speak?
Mayor and Council, there is no one on the line.
Okay. Then with that, are there any questions for Mr. Love? Councilmember Smith.
No questions.
Councilmember Knudsen.
No questions.
Councilmember Neblett.
None for me.
Councilmember Juniman.
I have only one, and it's just a formality, but those properties were all notified, and so all that remains for them is to fill out the correct paperwork. Is that correct? In order to take advantage of whatever deferral they were granted?
Mr. Love,
Mayor and Council, for anybody that was requesting a deferral, that is correct. They would have to fill out the necessary paperwork for a deferral. In this case, this item here is for a revision to the assessment. Following the council meeting, if we do move forward with revising the assessment, we will be sending them a updated assessment statement.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Council members, is there a motion?
I move a resolution approving the revised assessment roll for the County Road B Arcade Street Improvement City Project 19-22.
Is there a second? Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knudsen. The resolution adopting the revised assessment roll for County Road B and Arcade Street Improvement City Project 19-22. Is there any further discussion, council members? Hearing none, then let's move to a vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen?
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett?
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. The motion passes. We have one more agenda item, new business, the update on strategic priorities. Mr. Sable, you are presenting this tonight for us.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. This is Mike Sable, Assistant City Manager, HR Director. A little bit of change. We are going to have Lois Knudsen present this item Number one, I think she is most familiar with the materials in this. And frankly, as the Admin Services and Performance Management Coordinator, she's better equipped to speak on it. So I will defer to Lois, and I'll stand for any questions if you have any after that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Knudsen.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. 2020 has been an interesting year for all of us. And of course, the changes in our work situations due to COVID-19 have also affected the progress on our strategic plan. As you would expect during a global pandemic, there have been negative impacts to many of our initiatives. However, there have also been positive results as we have been forced to examine many of our processes and procedures and become more efficient. Overall, we're at 67% progress on our plan. Being 3/4 of the way through the year, we would like that number to be at 75%. However, considering all we've dealt with this year, I think we're doing really well. I'd just like to take a few minutes to go through each of the 6 strategic priorities and give you a few of the highlights and some of the disruptions. Community inclusiveness has been the priority that's been most affected by COVID. However, there are some positive things that have happened. One of our measures is the percentage of employees of color is up from 11.1% from last year to 14.3%. So that's great. The citizen survey is in progress right now, and that is a tool that we use to guide our plan. It's one of the things where we also take some of the measures such as resident satisfaction with our community. So that's a positive that that's happening. There's been some disruption involving the employee involvement in community events. For a while, there just weren't any events. Now they've been starting to come back up. There's a coat drive going on right now, as well as the food distribution with the Y that was mentioned earlier. Many of our staff in all departments have been involved with the food distribution, and we'd especially like to recognize the Public Works crews who helped at last week's event. Another measure is we want to have employee participation in cultural awareness and diversity training. Since we are unable to meet in person right now, we're looking for online options so that we can get that initiative back on track. And then we've had major disruptions, and those in the community inclusiveness area have all been affected by the closing of the Nature Center and the discontinuation of rec programming. So that was things we were measuring, such as environmental programs, youth scholarships, and activities for actively aging adults. But the task forces have been meeting, and we are looking forward to the recommendations they have so that we can move forward in these areas and make some modifications to our plan. The next strategic priority is financial sustainability. We're doing great there. All the measures are on track. We're maintaining an excellent bond rating of AA+, and we have a very strong S&P management score. So all things seem to be going well there. Next priority is infrastructure and asset management. Again, things are going pretty well. We're on track with the sewer cleaning and inspecting, stormwater structure inspections, pavement ratings, and road construction projects are all on track. There's been some disruption in, we track our assets, capital assets versus total net position. And part of that is we have a vehicle rating system. So we're trying to establish the value of our fleet. All the vehicles have been entered, but we need to work the mechanics inspections into that also so that we have a true idea of the value of our fleet. Another measure that's disrupted is the plan to implement one recommendation from the Parks and Rec master plan each year. All Parks and Rec CIP projects have been put on hold due to COVID, so that's not happening. But as Audra mentioned, there are some trail improvements about to happen at the Nature Center, so that's another positive. Then we move to communication, integrated communication. That's going quite well. We're on track with creating videos and updating social media content. And in these COVID times that we're dealing with, that's more important than ever because that's the real way we are communicating to the community. Operational effectiveness, we're doing quite well here. As I mentioned before, people working remotely. It's caused us to examine our processes and procedures and make some changes, and things are going really well there. Response time to resident requests is timely. This includes things such as permits, maintenance and field requests, and data practice requests. Wellness participation is steady, so that's good. And our employee turnover rate is 7.9, under our goal of 10, so that's also really good. There's been some disruption to the trash and recycling. We're trying to decrease our trash numbers and increase our recycling numbers. And one of our targets this year was going to be churches and businesses, but due to COVID, there hasn't been, that's made outreach difficult. Our final, there's a major disruption also there. The fire and EMS prevention programs, where they have gone out into the community almost on a weekly schedule and dealt with like senior living facilities and worked on just educating the public. Of course, there's been disruption to that due to COVID, but staff is exploring alternative approaches on how they can move forward. Then we have targeted redevelopment. That is the second most, that priority is the second most affected by COVID. But there have been some positives there as well. The Permanent Rice Larpenteur Alliance has been appointed and launched. The city will continue to participate in executive and other committee assignments. And the rental licensing staff is in place, and they have begun inspection of vacant units. There's been some disruption to our efforts in the north end. Staff is trying to figure out a way to determine business vacancies there, so they're working on that. And they are also looking into evaluating existing incentive programs. And there's been some holdup on that also due to COVID. Thank you. That's all I have right now. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Ms. Knudsen. I really appreciate the report and certainly the efforts. Quite frankly, what I anticipated was a lot more yellow and red, meaning some disruption or major disruption. Given the fact that we are in a global pandemic, I'm really very impressed and pleased at how much work we are continuing to accomplish, despite the fact that, you know, many people are working from home and, you know, we're socially distancing and trying to get through this pandemic. So thank you very much for this. I really appreciate it. Let's see if the council has any other questions or comments. Councilmember Smith.
No questions, thank you.
Councilmember Knudsen.
I think it's, I agree, Mayor, it's an impressive array of metrics and accomplishments, and I commend the staff.
Thank you, Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do have a couple of questions. You know, and I only say this because in my prior lives, I have worked in DIE, diversity, inclusion, equity, and I've been an HR director too. So that's the lens I'm looking at this with. And I only say that because I want to push just a little bit. I have a question about, one thing I didn't understand is the key outcome for number 1. It says Maplewood is a welcoming community where residents are accepted and engaged. And then it says you're on track 100%, but the community survey has just launched. So I just wasn't sure how those two, can you explain how you're 100% there and then the survey results aren't due until November or early December?
That is correct. What happens with those, how on track you are, it's fed from the bottom by the action initiatives, and the progress on those are what drives that percentage of how complete you are. So if the things under it are on track, then it's showing that it's 100% on track, even though we really aren't there yet.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right. And on your page 4, it's our page 198. Performance measure 1.2.1, 80% of benefits, 80% of benefit earning employees will participate in cultural awareness and diversity training. So here's the thing that I want to just say about this, because what you say here is staff is looking at online diversity and inclusion training. Exclusively as an in-person training is difficult due to COVID situation. I guess my question is, how is the MORE committee being used here? And I get a little nervous when I see that diversity training is something that is going to happen in the future, when there are things that you can do inside, and there are probably people in your organization who could help lead some of those discussions. I just thought about something like a brown bag lunch discussion. Diversity training doesn't have to be this major costly thing. Talking about diversity and inclusion and equity should be an ongoing process that doesn't have to be, like I said, major. So I'll just leave that there. And the last thing that I had a question about was performance measure 1.3.1, increase the percentage of employees of color among city staff by 2% per year. In your notes, it says participate in at least one hiring outreach initiative annually to reach non-traditional applicants, and you say 50% completed. I don't understand that. If it's 50% completed and you were only going to do one outreach, what's changed there? Or?
Mike,
I'm sorry.
you wanna take that?
Yeah, Mayor and council members, this is Mike Sable again. I will try to respond to the question. For the first one, it was participation in the outreach of events. We had actually scheduled a partnership outreach event with Ramsey County and some members of I believe it was the St. Paul Area Chamber of Commerce earlier this year. We were going to do an outreach event targeted to specific groups. And what had happened is that didn't happen. And so I think when we say 50%, our intent was to host that event and to follow that through. I think maybe that's just a function of not sliding the bar over back to zero to reflect that it didn't take place. That's something that we can correct. However, one of the things I want to highlight is that we have changed how we post and promote our postings. We now do direct outreach to the different community newspapers that specifically target different groups. So the Hmong Times, we now advertise in the Hmong Times. We now advertise in online outlets that target non-traditional candidates for our pool. So it is something that we haven't quite reconciled with how to deal in a COVID environment. But I think we will make a correction on 1.3.1 in terms of the action initiatives. I do also want to address your earlier comment about the MORE team. The MORE team continues to meet. This is the Maplewood Organization on Race and Equity. Mm-hmm. And, we, at a high level, try to talk about organizational wide initiatives. And that's what this document really does, is to try to capture that. I think one of the things that you're right, there's things that we have done that have been not system wide, I would argue. And so, for example, I was able to participate in the City County Management Association recent annual conference. They had devoted an entire cohort or a section around DEI initiatives. And so I've been able to participate in that. We've shared that work with the MORE team. They also have a race equity toolkit that allows us to analyze and evaluate specific city initiatives and programs. And I know EMS Chief Michael Mondor has done really great work with his group in terms of evaluating how their service delivery impacts, what are the impacts to potentially all of the populations that they've served. So they've done that work. I also know that EMS Chief Mike Mondor has secured an agreement with a consultant to actually help their command staff do some work around microaggressions and implicit bias training for their staff, because that's a group that touches the community members directly. And I think with, Chief Nadeau, I don't want to speak for him, but I know he's made some structural changes to the police department staffing for changing community outreach coordinator roles within the police department. So I say all of those things as probably an indictment against myself for not writing a better staff report, because it forces me to think that even though at a system level we didn't do what we said we were going to do, it doesn't mean that we stopped doing incremental work in those areas. But I'm actually now thinking we might need a broader conversation with the council summarizing some of the work, because the MORE team continues to meet and we're recruiting new members. And so there's an excitement around the work of that group.
Cool. I appreciate that. It makes a big difference, Mr. Sable, to hear those things. And I don't say it's an indictment against you about writing a better report. I understand that this is a high level look at things. And I like to know the nuts and bolts. Like I said, this is, to me, this is my lane. This is what I care about a lot. And I really do want to know what it is you guys are doing. I do. So that's why I ask the questions, and I appreciate your answers. So with Mayor, I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that insightful discussion. Councilmember Juniman, is there anything that you would like to ask?
No, it's just kind of a repeat of what some of my other colleagues did say. I was expecting, worse outcomes based on how the world is at this moment in time. And so it's at least a little bit reassuring to see that where we can make some headway and where there are outcomes that can be accomplished, there's some good effort at it happening. And that's particularly through the financial end of things. It was really good to see that, the right things are being done and the right thoughts are still there. And so I think people should take comfort in that, because I certainly did. But overall, I think it's more positive than I had feared it would be because of the times. So, this is a good thing to have in your hand and be able to say, okay, this was done and this they're working on and so on. I just think it's more reassuring than I had anticipated. So that's a tribute to staff and what they've been able to keep on doing and keep things moving.
I would totally agree with what you just said, Councilmember Juniman. I want to thank Mr. Sable and Ms. Knutson. I want to thank the MORE team and all of the efforts that staff are making in this regard. What's really interesting to me is that this really is what public entities should be doing in terms of looking at the metrics. And I know sometimes that can be challenging because for the most part, we are a service to our community. It's not like we make hamburgers or something, that is really tangible like that. And so this really is important for our community to show in a real transparent way what it is that we're trying to accomplish. And, we hold ourselves accountable as a result of it. And so I really want to commend you for doing this. We, as a council, I know we certainly don't take lightly that we are dealing with taxpayer money. And, the money comes from not only council members, but from our neighbors, from our businesses. And so we have to be able to measure how are we doing and what do we need to do better? What are we doing well? Where can we improve? And I think by using a system like this, it really helps. So thank you very much for all those who participate in putting this together. Council members, we need a motion to accept the strategic plan update for third quarter.
So move.
Moved by Juniman.
Second.
Second by Neblett, the motion to accept the strategic plan update for third quarter of 2020. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then Councilmember Smith, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilmember Knudsen?
Aye.
Councilmember Neblett?
Aye.
Councilmember Juniman?
Aye.
And I vote aye as well. Council members, we have completed our agenda, and this is an opportunity at this point. I've done this for all of our Zoom meetings. If there's any further comments or things that you would like to say, I recognize very well that this is an artificial forum that we have. You know, we're all sitting in our homes, presumably, conducting the business of the city and doing the very best job that we possibly can. So Councilmember Smith, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Just not a whole lot to add this meeting. I think we're continuing to work through some challenging issues, and just glad to be part of the team, and looking forward to getting some of these initiatives moved forward. So just not a whole lot to add tonight.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Knudsen.
Well, I'm just reflecting on the breadth and scope of the consent agenda. When I read and looked at everything on here, it's impressive stuff that we're working on, even in spite of everything that's going on. So we had a SCORE funding grant application that's really important. Then we had the livable communities that I'm very anxious to look at the metrics inside there as far as what we should expect for Maplewood to have livable communities and what percentage we should get. The Nature Center trail improvements, that is so important right now because as Audra said, they're continuing to increase the use of those trails, and without all kinds of special programming, we think people will get out on their own. And then the one that really impressed me was the resolution of support for Bruce Vento Trail. That master plan is the most incredible plan I've looked at in a long time. It's thorough. It looks at how that opportunity to connect all these communities is working toward, even with the BRT. All the things that stop in Maplewood, the things we have arranged, they're there right in front of us as a master plan. And then the Labor Management Committee, I read that, and there's a discussion in there about our health plan increase, modest, just because of the performance of our employees and their wellness program. So I just wanted to highlight some of the great things that were in the consent agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Neblett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering if anybody saw the paper on the St. Paul Pioneer, or I should call it the Pioneer Press, on Saturday.
I did.
Painted and tainted. It was huge. Maplewood, he appreciates your trails and your courtesy. Thanks to the city of Maplewood. For many years, I've used the trails to walk my dog and bike riding. Maplewood does a great job clearing snow from the trails in a very timely manner. They are very courteous working the trail. They're very courteous working the trails. Thank you so much. It's greatly appreciated. And that's from Bob Horner in North St. Paul. And it was just so nice to see. And besides that, it was huge letters, Maplewood. He appreciates your trails. It was great. And I agree. It snowed and people still like to get outside and walk. Just like Councilman Knudsen was talking about at the Nature Center. People just like to get out and walk and get some fresh air, get a little exercise. And it really helps when the trails around your house are clean and not slippery and icy. And that is really a courtesy and the commitment of the staff that takes care of that. So I'm with Bob Horner from North St. Paul. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It is much appreciated.
That was a great note in the paper.
It was just so nice to see. And it was just so big. I was just like, yeah.
And it was the first.
I've got a copy if anybody wants to see it. That's all. Thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. Being the last one before the mayor, there isn't much left to say, is there? Ditto what they said.
It's never stopped you.
I'm with Councilmember Knutson. It's kind of amazing the breadth of stuff that was on the agenda tonight. And I really think it's the one thing that, and it's easy to brush over that stuff, like the thing from the Labor Management Committee, but it's those internal workings of things, of the agreements for people behind the scenes that make a big difference. And, that the negotiating for the health insurance was very, shall we say, productive.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we need to thank our employees for participating in the wellness program, because it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I just think people need to be aware of, or maybe they're aware of, maybe I should say be appreciative of everything that our staff does to help make us a sustainable city in many different ways. And so I think it's and then this time, thinking about how much more difficult it is, I just think we need to appreciate that that's still going on to the best of our ability, and we will continue to do that. And I would also like to mention that I think we've been held up a little in the date now, but there will be a report in the not terribly distant future from the Climate Adaptation Committee on what lies ahead for us from that standpoint. So as an environmental city, we are trying to keep on track. But again, it is with great thanks to all the staff and everything they do to keep us heading in the right direction, even in very difficult times. It is, and I agree with Sylvia, it is a thing to be proud of.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. Another council meeting accomplished with, this Councilmember Knutson pointed out, a real broad range of topics tonight that are all of the things that are going on in the city that really it's quite amazing. So council members, there really is not that much more to say. Thank you all for your participation and your patience. And I think we're getting better at these Zoom meetings. Yeah, I never thought I would say that, but I think we're getting better at it. So with that, council members, we have concluded our agenda and we've accomplished the business of the city.
The only thing we need to do is remind people, if they haven't done it, to vote.
Please go vote. It is important. So with that, council members, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.